Welcome, fellow Americans, patriots, people of faith, conservatives, libertarians, or anyone who believes in the vision and creation of our founding fathers. Today's a very serious moment. As you know, we indicted Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, and James Biden before a citizens' grand jury. We then provided notice to them that they could come and plead innocent, guilty, or nolo contendere because we had scheduled a trial for Boise, Idaho. They didn't appear. When they didn't appear, either for the arraignment, where they could have pled innocent, guilty, or nolo contendere, or for the trial, we entered a plea of not guilty for them. But we tried them. We tried them in absentia. They could have also asked for a jury. Since they never showed up, they didn't get a jury, and the citizens judge who's with us today, Michael Pendleton, will be handing down the sentence. Now, we also provided notice to Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, and James Biden of the sentencing today. Obviously, they're not here. As a citizens prosecutor, I can tell you from my personal experience at this point that they have no respect for the rights of the American people. The American people have a right, as our founding fathers did, to mete out justice. In our Declaration of Independence, for instance, it's just one example, it says, when in the course of human events, the sovereign no longer represents the people, under the laws of nature and nature's God, nature and nature's God, not the law of the king, not the law of the state of Great Britain, nature and nature's God, that we, the people, have a right to alter or abolish that government and to form a new government by and for the people with equal rights for everyone in pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness. I'm phrasing what Jefferson and the others wrote and enacted in our Declaration of Independence, perhaps the most beautiful document ever written. It actually incorporates the Bible, as a matter of fact, because the founding fathers invoked the divine providence, knowing that King George would declare war on them once independence was declared. We also are going by a decision by Justice Antonin Scalia, may his soul rest in peace, 1992, United States versus Williams, where he held, writing for the majority of the Supreme Court, that the grand jury belongs to the American people, not, repeat, not the three branches of government. He did that in the context of a defendant who was challenging the standard of proof to indict. And he held that you can even indict based upon mere suspicion because the defendant will have a right to defend himself at trial. That's where the phrase, you can indict a ham sandwich, comes from. Now, we didn't have a ham sandwich here. We had much more than a ham sandwich. I mean, we had the whole pig, basically, when it comes to Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, and James Biden. A multitude of evidence coming from various sources, whether it was Tony Bobulinski, Hunter Biden's business partner, whether it was the laptop from hell of Miranda Devine, who has investigated this matter, whether with other individuals that came forward, information which is clearly in the public domain, showing without a doubt, beyond a reasonable doubt, not just probable cause, that Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, and James Biden have committed felonies by accepting bribes from communist China, Russia, Ukraine. Of course, now we find out Romania as well. And in the last few weeks, new information arose, even before the last few weeks, where investigations by the House of Representatives, of course, who intend to do nothing other than have show trials, not even trials, just hearings, dog and pony shows, which helps the Republicans raise money. But they don't want to impeach Biden. They want to leave him in office because that's great for them. They think that'll get the election to go in their behalf in 2024. But they don't want him gone. The irony is the Democrats want him gone at this point because they know he's committed felonies as well. And his age obviously is an issue. But that notwithstanding, is that new information came to light. Information that there were 11 LLC corporations that were laundering money to the Biden family. Information that Joe Biden did indeed talk with business partners of Hunter Biden in Ukraine, in Burisma, and other places, meeting with oligarchs at Cafe Milano in downtown Washington, D.C., not far from where I used to live in Georgetown. All of this information came out, including the prosecutor in the Ukraine, Viktor Shokin, who was fired because he was investigating the alleged crimes by Burisma and Hunter Biden. Joe Biden, while vice president, bragged that he had that prosecutor fired, while at the same time, documents which have emerged show that the government at the time, the Obama administration, thought that this prosecutor was doing a good job trying to clean up corruption in Ukraine. All of this, in addition to the fact that Viktor Shokin has come forward now and said that Biden used bribes to have him fired and to remove him so he could no longer investigate the crimes of Burisma in Ukraine. All of it, overwhelming evidence of guilt. And yet, Joe Biden lied about his association with Hunter's colleagues, his business partners. And a recent colleague came forward and spilled the beans on that as well. Now, in 48 states of this country, if you know that a felony has occurred or have information, a citizen has a right to make an arrest and to turn the offender over to law enforcement. Freedom Watch has gone beyond that. We've gotten convictions, and you can see the convictions that were handed down by Judge Michael Pendleton, who you can view here on this YouTube video, which is being broadcast live and will also can be found at freedomwatchusa.org at the conclusion of the sentencing. We have given them that opportunity, and we have given them the right, as I said, even to appear today, but they're not here because they don't respect the rights of the American people. Now, once Judge Pendleton issues his sentence, whatever it is, we will turn it over to established law enforcement to carry it out. And that includes the right of arrest. Now, I've always said we're not going to be violent, we're not going to be physical, but law enforcement will have that authority, and they would have that authority even without the conviction, because there certainly is evidence that a felony was committed, probable cause. I read to you last week the District of Columbia Code. District of Columbia, the most left-leaning, I wouldn't call it even a city at this point, we call it a swamp because it's so corrupt. But even the District of Columbia recognized that citizens' arrests when information is available that a felony is being committed. So I'm going to turn this over to Judge Pendleton to issue his sentence and to explain his rationale for that sentence. And if he does issue a sentence, which requires enforcement, it will not be Freedom Watch that carries it out. It will be established law enforcement. We will ask them to do it. And we hope that people in that established law enforcement community will have the courage to do what is in the best interests of the American people. Because we cannot have a president, if you want to call him that, who not only is not there mentally or physically, but perhaps is the biggest criminal ever to occupy the White House, maybe even surpassing the Clintons at this point, because we know that literally tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars were laundered in bribes from communist China, Ukraine, and Russia. And we can see the effect of that with regard to how President Biden interacts with communist China and with these other countries. Clearly, his actions speak louder than words. He has been more than compromised. So I turn this over to Judge Pendleton to issue any sentence that he may have. Judge Pendleton.
Thank you, Prosecutor Klayman. It's been really quite an experience to spend this last several months looking at evidence, weighing evidence, and it's really overwhelming, the amount of evidence and the clarity that this evidence presents of guilt. The Bidens, all three, are guilty of severe and very serious crimes. And it's one of the things we look at, the severity and whether there's contrition. And clearly there is no contrition. Not only did they not ever show to present a case or to present any contrary evidence, they've continued to spend money as though it was theirs, when we know that much of the money that was procured in the houses that they have and the money that they're spending was taken in bribes from foreign countries and foreign entities. And there's just no question about that anymore. Therefore, the sentence has to be severe because, well, for one thing, We don't want a two-tiered justice system. And if peaceful protesters from January 6th can get 20 years or more, then certainly for the crimes that we're talking about, the Bidens are justified in receiving at least that much. So my judgment is that the Bidens, as co-conspirators, are sentenced to 20 years and to be carried out by whomever we can get to carry it out. If there's anyone out there, including sheriffs or someone in the District of Columbia who's willing to carry out these sentences, then we ought to present these findings to them and ensure that these things are carried out to the extent that they can. These are very serious crimes, and they're listed in the conviction, and now sentencing of 20 years is really generous in many ways. But because we don't want a two-tiered system, we want it to be commiserate, at least commiserate with the sentences that have been given to peaceful protesters from January 6th. These are serious crimes, much more serious. And so in a sense, we're being lenient. And I'm being lenient with the Bidens, Joe in particular, considering his age and so forth. So all things were considered, the sentencing guidelines were used, and 20 years is my judgment.
Yes, and we're going to ask the judge to issue a written report of the sentencing. And with regard to carrying out, we will be notifying established law enforcement to carry it out. And we trust, as Judge Pendleton said, that there will be individuals in established law enforcement that will carry it out. We're not going to ask vigilantes to go carry it out or anything to that effect. But this is also an educational experience for the American people, regardless of whether it's carried out or not. And we trust that it will be, because the American people have their own destiny in their own hands. We have rampant crime in the streets. We have people running across the border as drug traffickers, human traffickers, sex traffickers, terrorists. American people need to defend ourselves. And this is exactly what our founding fathers did when the king took away our justice system in the days, months, and years leading up to 1776, took the criminal justice system back to the Court of St. James in London, England, and had his judges, his hack judges, rubber stamp his edicts. The founding fathers said, that's enough, we can't take it anymore. And they couldn't take the high taxes, they couldn't take the redcoats busting into our houses, stealing our property, raping our women, as if, they were supreme. And because of that, they declared independence on 1776. They didn't declare war on the king declared war on them after that, on us. These are our forefathers. So we today face a situation which is far worse than existed in 1776. We had a king then who, was not doing much more than trying to overtax the colonies and to terrorize them to keep them under control. Today we have a justice system, if you want to call it that, from a governmental level, with a Justice Department that's being run like a Gestapo to quell all dissent, and a federal judiciary in District of Columbia, which rubber stamps, much like the king's judges rubber stamped his edicts, because they know that the American people are onto them too, that they don't make decisions on the basis of the merits generally, they make it on the basis of who appointed them to the bench and politics, and they've seen it. And the judge's reference, in my opinion, to January 6th is appropriate, because literally these defendants, the overwhelming majority of which were peaceful, they walked into our capital, and the charges sometimes are even simply trespass, are getting prison time, and they're being forced, even though they don't believe in what they're being forced to say, to literally get down on their knees and to say, we regret what we did, we regret the protest, and we will never do it again. And then they say, oh, it's really because, and the lawyers that are representing them are doing them a disservice, it's because of Donald Trump, that's why we did it. This is our justice system today. Doesn't look much different than what you see in Iran, in North Korea, in Russia, and in other dictatorial regimes throughout the United States. And that's why the sentence is so important, because Joe Biden must be held to the same standards that everybody is held to. And his crimes are far worse than a January 6th peaceful protesters walking into our Capitol. He has compromised not just the integrity of this country, but the national security of this country. And the Republicans on Capitol Hill run around like the Keystone Cops, like chickens without their heads on. We're going to have a hearing. We're going to get information. We're thinking about an impeachment inquiry. How long have we heard they're thinking about an impeachment inquiry? They know they'll never impeach him because they want to leave him in office, because they want a weak Joe Biden going into the 2024 presidential elections. And meanwhile, the Democrats, using the New York Times, Washington Post, The Hill, Politico, all their leftist sycophants, are doing their best to convince Joe Biden to quit and not to run for re-election, because they know that he has committed serious crimes, and they want to insert, their candidate, their younger candidate, so they can continue their hold on this country. That's what you've got. So it's now up to the American people, for ourselves to rise up. This is the beginning of other prosecutions. We've already have some. Judge Pendleton will be issuing a decision shortly with regard to Anthony Fauci, Dr. Fauci, whose actions resulted in the death thus far of over 6 million people and counting, even more than Adolf Hitler in the Holocaust, with sending the seeds of COVID-19 to the communist Chinese to experiment with at their bioweapons lab in Wuhan, and then lying about it to Congress that he wasn't doing gain-of-function research. Senator Rand Paul issued a criminal referral, but nothing will ever happen because the Justice Department is controlled by Joe Biden. So this is why it's so important what we're doing. And I ask you to go to freedomwatchusa.org, contribute with tax-deductible contributions. Get my book, It Takes a Counter-Revolution, Wake Up America. See the legal basis for what we are doing here, and join Freedom Watch's Justice League. We are your Justice Department. You have no Justice Department in our so-called government. So I want to thank Judge Pendleton for his service. It's not finished. There's more on the horizon, not just Anthony Fauci. Robert Mueller was indicted. He will be tried. Federal judges who are violating their oath of office in the District of Columbia will also be subject to grand jury proceedings, and others out there who have literally perverted our justice system to the point that the American people now need to rise up themselves and peacefully and legally take matters into their own hands. So thank you, Judge Pendleton. We will resume these proceedings at a later date, and we will keep people apprised of whether or not law enforcement will do their duty and exercise your sentence and meet out your sentence.
Well, thank you. Thank you for this incredible presentation that made my job easy, because it was clear, it was convincing, and it was well presented. And I appreciate that. That's good lawyering.
Well, I might add, Judge Pendleton is a lawyer as well, so he's able to judge that.
Yes.
I hope the fact that we're both lawyers are not held against us.
Yes, exactly. We're the good guys.
The legal profession, unfortunately, is not what it was meant to be these days. And that's what we're trying to resolve and bring back a sense of integrity on behalf of the American people. So thank you, Judge Pendleton.
Thank you.
Stay tuned, fellow patriots. We're just beginning. This is the beginning of a long collaboration to clean up the cesspool of corruption in our government and our legal system. Thank you. God bless.